The stars were not silent anymore. For centuries they had watched over Earth without comment, while humans built cities, fought wars, and reached higher into the sky. Then came the day when humanity stepped beyond its own world, into the cold, dark between planets. That was when the galaxy noticed them, but barely. In the far reaches of known space, the Zalari Federation ruled with quiet confidence. They were old, ancient even, and their ships moved like thoughts across the void. Their technology shimmered with power, and their laws stretched across hundreds of systems. To them, humanity was noise, background static in a universe full of louder voices, but humans kept building. They planted flags on barren moons and filled orbiting stations with life. They sent ships deeper than anyone expected, and slowly they spread farther than any species ever had at their stage. No one paid attention, at least no one important did. On the edge of human-controlled space, a small colony called New Haven floated in the shadow of a red sun. It wasn't much, just a mining outpost turned settlement, with domes made of reinforced glass and walls that hummed with recycled air. But to those who lived there, it was home. Alex Porter stood near the main dome's edge, watching the horizon shift from orange to black as the sun dipped below the rocky land. He wore a faded military jacket, sleeves rolled up, showing years of service. He wasn't supposed to be here. After 10 years in the Navy, he'd promised himself he'd never look at another star unless it was through a window on Earth. But Earth was far away now. He'd come to New Haven to help train local defense forces. The government said it was just a precaution. No one really thought war would come this far out. Not yet. Beside him, Maya Reyes adjusted her visor and looked up at the sky. She was younger than Alex, but sharp in ways that made people listen. Her mind worked faster than most, always thinking 2 steps ahead. She was an engineer working on experimental propulsion tech for civilian ships. But she didn't see herself as just a scientist. She saw herself as a builder of futures. "Do you think they'll ever notice us?" she asked, her voice soft against the windless silence. Alex didn't answer right away. He knew what she meant. The aliens, the big ones, the ones who ruled space like kings of a forgotten castle. "They're busy," he said finally. "Too busy to care about a few humans poking around in the dark. But we're not just poking," she said. "We're building. We're growing." He gave her a tired smile. "That doesn't mean they'll like it." Maya frowned but didn't argue. She knew how the galaxy saw humans. As newcomers, as children still learning how to walk. But she also knew something else. Humans learned fast. Inside the colony's control center, Daniel Cruz sat in front of a large screen, eyes scanning lines of data. He was young, barely 25, but already a skilled pilot. His dream had always been to fly among the stars, not just on maps or simulations, but for real. And now he was close. New Haven didn't have a big fleet, just a few scout ships and a handful of fighters. But Daniel flew them like they were part of his body. Every turn, every dive, every barrel roll, he could feel it in his bones. Still, flying wasn't enough. He wanted more. He wanted to go deeper, to see places no human had seen before. Maybe even find something new, something worth writing about. He tapped a few keys and pulled up a report from the outer sensors. "Nothing again," he muttered to himself. Outside, the stars were quiet, but somewhere far beyond the edges of human knowledge, things were starting to change. Back on Earth, politics moved like slow water. Governments debated whether to expand further into space or hold back, until they could prove they could protect themselves. Some believed in peace, others in caution. A few whispered about war. In the halls of the United Earth Council, a man named Senator James Holloway stood by a window, looking down at the city lights below. "We should be careful," he said to his aide. "We don't know what's out there." His aide nodded. "But if we don't move forward, someone else will." James sighed. And maybe that's better. He wasn't wrong. Because in the vast emptiness of space, other civilizations were watching. Some with curiosity, others with the indifference and some with quiet calculation. The Zilari Federation had been around for thousands of years. They had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. When they looked at humans, they didn't see a threat. They saw a spark, bright, yes, but short-lived. Their council met in a chamber of light and sound where decisions were made without spoken words. They had no need for loud arguments or messy debates. They understood each other in ways no human could. One of them, a being named Varel, spoke silently to the others. The humans grow bold. They reach too far. Another responded, "They are not ready. They do not understand balance." A third joined, "Let them play. They will fade soon enough." And so, the Zilari decided, humanity was not worth concern. Not yet. But even the oldest stars can be surprised. Back on New Haven, Maya walked through the research lab, checking on her team. The project she was leading was risky, trying to build a new kind of FTL drive that could allow ships to jump instantly across space. It was dangerous, untested, and expensive. But she believed in it. If it worked, it could change everything. She paused in front of a holographic display showing the prototype engine core. Lines of energy pulsed through it like veins of lightning. "This could make us faster than anything out there," she whispered. Her assistant, a quiet man named Carl, looked up from his notes. "But only if it doesn't tear the ship apart first." She smiled. "Every great invention has risks." Carl didn't reply. He was used to her optimism. Later that night, Alex sat alone in the officer's lounge, sipping coffee and reading reports. He flipped through pages of outdated training manuals and mission logs. Most of it was boring, standard stuff. But then he saw something unusual, a message from Earth. It was short, almost dismissive. "Increased alien activity reported near outer colonies. Recommend heightened readiness." He read it again. Then he folded the paper and put it in his pocket. Something was changing, and he wasn't sure if humanity was ready. Across the system, Daniel was flying a routine patrol. His fighter sliced through the dark like a knife, engines humming softly behind him. He loved this part. The silence, the stars, the feeling of being completely alone in the universe. But tonight, something felt different. He checked his radar. A blip appeared, small, fast. He narrowed his eyes. "Control, this is Cruz," he said into his comms. "I've got movement outside our sector. Unknown origin." There was a pause. "Copy. Cruz. Can you identify?" He pushed the throttle forward and dove toward the signal. As he approached, the blip disappeared. Gone. Like it had never been there. Daniel circled the area, scanning every angle. Nothing. He returned to base confused, uneasy. Something was out there, watching, waiting, and maybe listening. Back on Earth, the debate continued. Should humanity push further? Should they try to join the Galactic Council? Or should they stay quiet, unnoticed? Some argued for expansion, others for caution. But no one saw the storm coming, because, while humans argued and built and dreamed, the galaxy had started to take notice, and not all of it was friendly. The stars were still again, quiet, cold. But beneath their light, something had changed. Daniel Cruz sat alone in the pilot's lounge, staring at his flight log. He had reported the strange movement during patrol, but nothing came of it. No one else saw it. No other ships picked it up. It was like the blip had vanished, not just from radar, but from reality. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there. Outside, the colony of New Haven hummed with life. Workers moved between domes, loading supplies onto transport pods. Children ran through the corridors of the central dome, laughing as they chased each other past rows of hydroponic plants. Everything looked normal, but Daniel knew better. He stood up and walked outside, stepping into the thin air of the colony's outer ring. The sky above was red, stained by the dying light of the system's sun. In the distance, mining drones hovered over rocky hills, digging for rare metals buried deep beneath the surface. New Haven wasn't rich in resources. It wasn't a major hub or a military base. But to some, it must have looked important enough to watch, important enough to attack. And then, without warning, the first explosion hit. It came from the east, where the fuel storage tanks were kept. A bright flash lit up the sky, followed by a shockwave that knocked Daniel off his feet. He rolled onto his back, coughing from the dust kicked up by the blast. Alarms began to scream across the colony. Attack! Attack! This is not a drill! People ran in all directions. Some fell. Others screamed for family members. The sky, once calm, now filled with fire and smoke. Daniel scrambled to his feet and ran toward the hangar bay. If this was an attack, he needed to be in the air. As he reached the hangar, Alex Porter was already there. He had been reviewing training drills when the alarm started. Now he wore a look of grim determination as he shouted orders to the few soldiers stationed on New Haven. "Get the fighters ready," he yelled. "We need eyes in the sky." Maya Reyes arrived next, her face pale with fear but her mind working fast. "What happened?" she asked. "No idea," Alex said. "But we're under fire." She looked around, her eyes landing on the control panel near the launch pad. "I can get us comms," she said. "If I can tap into the relay tower, we might reach Earth." Alex nodded. "Do it. Fast." Maya ran off, disappearing into the chaos. Inside the hangar, Daniel climbed into his fighter. His hands shook slightly as he powered up the engines. He had trained for this moment. He had dreamed of flying into battle, but now that it was real, it felt different, more dangerous, more final. The hangar doors opened with a groan, revealing the burning skyline. Smoke rose into the sky, darkening the stars. Daniel pushed the throttle forward and launched into the night. Above him, 3 enemy ships hovered like silent predators. They were sleek, black, and unfamiliar. Their hulls shimmered with energy shields, making them almost invisible against the stars. Daniel's heart pounded. He wasn't alone. His radar pinged with more contacts. Enemy fighters were closing in. He dove low, skimming the surface of the colony, avoiding the worst of the blasts. Then he pulled up sharply and fired a burst of plasma rounds toward the nearest enemy craft. The shots missed. A second later, return fire lit up the space around him. Daniel twisted hard to the right, barely dodging a beam of blue energy that sliced through the air where he'd been a second ago. This wasn't a drill. This was war. Back on the ground, Maya worked quickly at the comms station inside the colony's control center. Sparks flew from broken panels and the lights flickered as power surged unpredictably. She tapped rapidly on the keyboard, trying to establish a link with Earth. "Come on. Come on." A voice crackled through the speakers. "This is New Haven. Calling any United Earth vessel. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack." There was a pause. Then static. Maya cursed under her breath. She tried again. "United Earth Command, do you read?" Another pause. Then finally, a response. "This is Earth. We read you, New Haven. What's your status?" "We're being bombed," Maya shouted over the noise of another explosion nearby. "We don't know who it is yet, but they're hitting us hard." There was silence for a moment. Then the voice returned. "Hold your position. Help is on the way." Maya didn't believe it. She knew help wouldn't come in time. She turned off the comms and grabbed her tools. If the colony was going to survive, she needed to make sure the defense systems were online. Meanwhile, Alex had taken command of what little forces remained. He gathered the remaining soldiers and civilians near the main dome. "There's no telling how many of them there are," he said, "but we're not going down without a fight." One of the younger recruits stepped forward. "What do we do?" Alex looked at the sky, watching Daniel's fighter dart between enemy ships. "We hold the line," he said, "until someone comes to help us." Back in orbit, the attackers showed no sign of stopping. Their ships moved with precision, striking key points in the colony: fuel reserves, communications towers, power stations. Whoever they were, they knew exactly what they were doing. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the attack stopped. The enemy ships pulled back, disappearing into the stars. Silence returned. Smoke drifted through the air. Fires burned unchecked. People cried out for help. Daniel landed his fighter with shaking hands. As soon as he stepped out, Alex ran up to him. "You see anything?" he asked. Daniel shook his head. "Not much. They were too fast. Too quiet." Alex frowned. "You recognize the ships?" "No," Daniel said. "I've never seen anything like them before." Maya joined them, covered in soot and sweat. "They cut our comms," she said. "I got one message out to Earth, but I don't think anyone's coming." Alex looked around at the ruins of New Haven. "This wasn't random," he said. "They chose us for a reason." Maya crossed her arms. "Maybe because we're far from Earth. Maybe because they thought we'd be easy." Daniel clenched his fists. They were wrong. For the first time since the attack began, Alex allowed himself a small smile. "Yes," he said. "They were." In the days that followed, reports came in from other colonies. Attacks had occurred across human-controlled space. Small settlements, mining worlds, research stations. No one had expected this. No one had been ready. Earth responded, slowly. Politicians argued about whether this was a misunderstanding or an act of war. Scientists debated the origin of the attackers. Military leaders scrambled to assess the damage. But the truth was clear. Someone had decided humanity was a threat, and they wanted to end it before it could grow stronger. On the Zalari homeworld, the council met again. The attack on New Haven was discussed briefly, then dismissed. "The humans are weak," one member said. "They will break easily," another added. But Varel, the same being who had spoken before, watched silently. He did not share their confidence. Something in the way the humans fought, the way they held their ground, troubled him. He sent a quiet message to the fleet commander overseeing the operation. "Watch them carefully." Because even though the war had only just begun, the galaxy had made a mistake. They had ignored humanity. Now, humanity was awake, and they would not go quietly. The war had come like a storm with no warning. It struck fast, hard, and without mercy. Across human space, colonies burned. Ships were torn apart in orbit. Families were lost in fire and silence. But not all was gone. From the ruins of New Haven, something new began to grow. Alex Porter stood on the edge of what used to be the main dome. Now it was broken glass and twisted metal. The wind blew through the cracks, carrying dust and ash. He looked out over the colony, now half destroyed, but still alive. That was enough, for now. He had gathered what was left of the local defense force and survivors. Some were soldiers. Most were civilians who had picked up weapons for the first time. None of them knew how to win this fight. But they knew they couldn't just give up. "Listen up," Alex said, his voice steady despite the pain in his body. "We don't have much. We don't have ships, we don't have supplies, and we sure as hell don't have help coming soon." A few people nodded. Others looked scared. "But we do have one thing," he continued. "We're still here." There was silence for a moment. Then someone clapped once. Another joined. Soon, even the youngest among them were nodding. Fists clenched. They weren't done yet. Across the colony, Maya Reyes worked inside the remains of her lab. Smoke still rose from parts of the structure, but she didn't care. She had one goal now, her prototype FTL drive. It wasn't finished, not by a long shot. But after the attack, she realized something. If humans could move faster than light, they could strike back before the enemy even saw them coming. She wiped sweat from her brow and looked at the engine core sitting in front of her. Wires dangled, like veins. Lights flickered weakly. It was close. So close. She turned to Carl, her assistant, who had stayed with her even after the blast. "We need more power," she said. "If I can stabilize the jump sequence, we might actually make this work." Carl frowned. "You mean test it?" "Yes," she said. "Now." He looked around at the broken walls, the failing lights, the sounds of distant gunfire echoing from the outer ring. "This isn't exactly the best time," he muttered. Maya gave him a tired smile. "When else are we going to have a chance?" Carl sighed but started working beside her. Meanwhile, Daniel Cruz sat in the cockpit of his damaged fighter. He had landed it barely intact after the attack. One wing was scorched, and the radar was cracked. Still, it flew. He stared at the controls, hands shaking slightly. He had seen death that day. Real death. Not something from training or simulations. People he knew were gone. Friends, civilians, kids. And there was nothing he could do to bring them back. A voice came over the comms. "Cruz, you reading me?" It was Alex. Daniel pushed the button. "I'm here. We need every pilot we've got," Alex said. "We're forming a response team. You in?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes." Minutes later, he met the others near the hangar. There weren't many, just a handful of pilots, some with fresh burns, others with cuts and bruises. They looked tired, scared, but they were ready. One of them, a woman named Rachel, stepped forward. "What's the plan?" she asked. "We hit them back," Alex said simply. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "How? We don't have the numbers. We don't even have full fuel." Alex pointed toward the research lab. "We've got something new, something fast." Rachel followed his gaze. "You're kidding," she said. "Nope," Alex replied. "If Maya pulls it off, we'll have a way to get behind enemy lines before they know what hit them." Rachel looked doubtful, but she nodded. "If you say so." Back in the lab, Maya and Carl worked non-stop. They rewired circuits, recalibrated the energy flow, and tested each component manually. Every second mattered. Outside, the sky remained dark with smoke. Fires still burned. But somewhere beyond the wreckage, hope still flickered. Finally, Maya took a deep breath and flipped the final switch. The engine core lit up. Light pulsed through the wires like lightning. For a moment, everything shook. Then, it stabilized. Maya grinned. "It works." Carl let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You're insane." "And brilliant," she added. She tapped into the colony's last communication relay and sent a message. "This is Reyes. Prototype is online, ready for field test." Within minutes, Alex received the signal. He turned to the small group of pilots waiting nearby. "Let's go." Daniel climbed into his fighter. So did the others. Their ships were battered, their weapons low, but they had purpose now. Purpose made them dangerous. As the fighters lifted off, Maya watched from the ground. Her heart pounded. This was it. The first real use of human-made FTL tech in combat. No one knew what would happen. The fighters reached the edge of the system. Alex gave the order. "All units, engage jump." One by one, the ships vanished. Not flying. Away. Disappearing. Teleporting. They reappeared just outside the enemy fleet. Silent, unseen. Ready. The enemy ships hovered above another colony. This one still untouched. The aliens had returned thinking humanity was broken. They were wrong. The fighters opened fire. Plasma rounds tore through shields. Explosions lit up the darkness. The Zalari ships scrambled to react, too late. The human ships jumped again and again, striking from nowhere. Disappearing before retaliation. It was chaos, and for the first time since the war began, the tide was turning. Back on New Haven, Maya watched the data stream come in. The mission was a success. The fighters had survived. The jump had worked. More importantly, they had hurt the enemy. Carl looked at her, stunned. "They're actually winning." Maya smiled. For now. Across human space, word spread fast. Survivors from other colonies heard the news. Small groups of fighters began coordinating attacks. Defense systems were upgraded. Engineers worked non-stop to replicate Maya's FTL tech. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were fighting back. On the Zalari homeworld, the council met again. Varel spoke first. "The humans are adapting," another member responded. "They cannot win." Their technology is inferior. But Varel disagreed. They learn quickly. They improvise. They surprise us. Silence followed. Then another voice joined. Perhaps we underestimated them. For the first time in centuries, doubt crept into the minds of the Zelari. And far across the stars, Alex, Maya, and Daniel stood together, watching the sky. The war wasn't over, but for the first time they believed they could win because humanity had risen from the ashes, and they were only getting started. The stars had always watched silently, but now they saw something new. Humans were no longer easy prey. Across human-controlled space, small victories added up. The FTL jump tech had changed everything. Ships could appear behind enemy lines, strike hard, and vanish before a counterattack could form. What had once been a scattered defense was turning into something more dangerous, guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. But with every win came a cost. Daniel Cruz sat alone in the pilot's lounge, staring at his hands. They were shaking again. He had flown more missions in the last few weeks than he had in all his years of training. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same things: flames, smoke, ships falling like stars. He wasn't sure how many friends he had lost. Too many. Outside, the sky over New Haven was still dark with ash. Fires from the first attack had only just begun to die down, but the colony was alive. People were rebuilding, piece by piece. Inside the control center, Alex Porter stood beside Maya Reyes as she worked on her latest project. "This is it," she said, pointing to a holographic display. "If we can get this working, we'll be able to make jumps faster than ever before." Alex looked at the data. "You're pushing the limits." Maya gave him a tired smile. "That's kind of the point." She turned back to the screen, adjusting the energy flow through the prototype engine core. The FTL drive had already changed the war. Now she wanted to make it better. Faster, stronger. Carl, her assistant, walked in holding a report. "We got word from Earth," he said. "They want us to stop testing and start mass production." Maya frowned. "We're not ready for that yet." Carl shrugged. "They don't care. They say we need more ships out there now." Alex crossed his arms. "And what happens when one of them blows up because the system isn't stable?" Carl didn't answer. He knew Alex was right. Maya sighed and stepped away from the console. "I'll send a message. Tell them we need more time." Alex nodded. "Do it fast. I have a feeling we won't get much of it." Back on the Zelari homeworld, the council met again. Tension filled the chamber. Varel, the being who had spoken before, floated in silence as the others argued. "The humans are adapting too quickly," one voice said. "We must end this now," another added. A third voice joined. "They are not strong enough to defeat us. But if we wait too long, they may become so." Varel finally spoke. "Then we do not wait." There was a pause. Then, a decision was made. A new weapon would be deployed, one that would end the war before it could go any further. On Earth, the United Earth Council debated furiously. Senator James Holloway stood at the center of the room, watching as leaders argued about what to do next. "We can't keep sending our people out there without proper support," he said. "We're losing ground." Another senator shook his head. "We're not losing, we're fighting back." Holloway frowned. "That's not the same thing." Across the room, a military officer stepped forward. "We've received reports of increased enemy movement," he said. "It looks like they're preparing for something big." Silence fell. Then someone asked the question everyone was thinking. What kind of something? No one had an answer, but soon they would find out. Back in New Haven, Daniel climbed into his fighter for another patrol. The war had changed him. He wasn't the same young pilot who had dreamed of flying among the stars. Now, every mission felt like a goodbye. As he powered up the engines, Alex approached. "You good?" he asked. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Alex clapped him on the shoulder. "We all are." Daniel lifted off, joining the other pilots in the sky. They flew in tight formation, scanning for enemy ships. Nothing showed up on radar. Still, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. He wasn't wrong. Far beyond human space, a massive Zalari dreadnought slipped through the void like a shadow. It was unlike anything humanity had faced before, larger than any known warship, armed with weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Its mission was clear: end the war. Erase humanity. Word of the ship spread slowly through the Zalari ranks. Some feared its power, others welcomed it. But Varel watched it with quiet concern. He had seen how humans fought, how they adapted, how they survived. Killing them wouldn't be enough. They needed to be understood. But it was too late for that. Now, the dreadnought was on its way, and it was heading straight for human space. Back on New Haven, Maya sat alone in her lab, staring at the numbers on her screen. Something wasn't right. She had run simulations for the new FTL jump patterns dozens of times. Each time, the results were the same. The system was unstable. If they used it in combat now, it could fail, or worse, it could destroy the ship. She rubbed her eyes, exhausted. "I'm missing something," she muttered. Carl walked in with a cup of coffee. "Still working?" he asked. She nodded. "Trying to fix the jump sequence. If we push it too far, the whole system might collapse." Carl took a sip. "So, what do we do?" Maya looked at him. "We test it. One more time." Carl groaned. "Of course you do." Outside, Alex stood near the launch pad, looking up at the sky. The war was changing and not in their favor. Back on Earth, the military command center buzzed with activity. Alarms blared. Officers ran between stations. A new signal had been picked up. Large, fast, unknown. "Origin," one of the officers shouted across the room. "It's not just a ship, it's a fleet." Everyone froze. Then the worst possible news came in. "They're targeting Earth." Panic spread like fire. Orders were given. Defenses were raised. But no one believed it would be enough. Because somewhere out there, the largest warship ever built was closing in, and it had one purpose: to end humanity forever. The sky over Earth was dark with fear. Across the planet, people looked up at the stars, wondering if they would live to see another day. Across cities, towns, and colonies, families held each other tight. Some prayed. Others prepared for war. In core, orbit human ships formed a last line of defense. Fighters lined up like bees around a hive. Battle stations were armed. Every soldier, pilot, and engineer knew this might be their last mission, and somewhere out there the Zalari dreadnought closed in. It moved like death itself, silent, unstoppable, massive. Inside the command center on Earth, Alex Porter stood, beside military leaders, watching the data stream in. "Estimate time to impact?" he asked. A young officer checked the readings. "Less than 4 hours." Alex clenched his jaw. "We don't have that long," he said. Behind him, Maya Reyes stepped forward, holding a small tablet. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with purpose. "I finished the jump protocol," she said. "It's stable now, we can use it." Everyone turned to look at her. "You're sure?" Alex asked. Maya nodded. "If we do this right, we can get behind the dreadnought before it reaches Earth." One of the officers frowned. "You want to teleport inside enemy lines?" "Yes," Maya said simply. There was silence. Then Alex spoke again. "We don't have any other choice." He turned to Daniel Cruz, who had just walked into the room. Daniel looked tired, but his voice was strong. "I'm in." So were the others. Within minutes, the plan was set. A small strike team of fighters would use the new FTL jump tech to appear behind the dreadnought. Their goal: disable its main weapons before it could fire on Earth. It was a suicide mission, but no one backed. Down. Back on New Haven, Maya worked quickly to install the upgraded jump drive into the lead fighter. Carl helped her, hands shaking slightly as he tightened the last bolt. "You really think this will work?" he asked. Maya gave him a tired smile. We wouldn't be doing it if I didn't. Carl sighed. Just come back alive, okay? She nodded. I'll try. Outside, the sky was clear, but the stars above felt heavier than ever. At the launch pad, Daniel suited up. He checked his helmet, his oxygen levels, and the controls of his fighter. His heart pounded. This wasn't what he had dreamed of when he first learned to fly, but it was what he had chosen. Alex approached him. You ready? He asked. Daniel took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. Alex clapped him on the shoulder. Good. Let's make history. Minutes later, the strike team launched into space. Their ships were fast, sleek, and armed with everything they had left. Behind them, Earth faded into darkness. Ahead, the dreadnought loomed like a mountain made of shadow. The jump signal came through. All units, prepare for teleport. Maya sat in the lead ship, fingers flying across the control panel. She double-checked. The coordinates, the energy flow, the timing, everything had to be perfect. Now, she shouted. One by one, the ships vanished, and then they reappeared, right behind the dreadnought, silent, unseen, ready. Before the enemy could react, the human ships opened fire. Plasma rounds lit up the void. Explosions rippled along the hull of the massive warship. Alarms blared across its decks. The Zalari were not ready for this. Inside the dreadnought's command chamber, Varel watched the battle unfold. His mind was calm, even as chaos spread around him. They are here, he thought. He reached out to the fleet commander. Do not destroy them yet. Let us see what they are capable of. On the human side, the fight was brutal. Daniel dove between enemy turrets, firing at key points on the dreadnought's armor. Missiles streaked past him. One clipped his wing, sending his fighter spinning. He pulled hard on the controls, righting himself just in time to see an enemy fighter heading straight for him. He fired. The enemy exploded in a flash of light. Got him, Rachel shouted over comms. Daniel grinned despite himself. Nice shot. Maya's voice cut through the noise. We need to hit the core. That's the only way to stop it, Alex confirmed. Understood. Move in. The fighters pushed forward, dodging heavy fire as they approached the heart of the dreadnought. Inside the command center on Earth, the tension was unbearable. Officers watched the data stream in. They're inside the outer shell. They're taking heavy damage. Maya's ship is down. Gasps filled the room. Then, a new signal. Command, this is Daniel Cruz, he said, voice shaky. Maya's still alive. We're making our move. Back on the dreadnought, Maya crawled out of her wrecked cockpit. Smoke filled the air. Her suit was torn, but she was alive. Daniel landed nearby and opened the hatch. Come on, he yelled. She ran to him, pulling herself into the cockpit. We have one shot at this, she said. Can you get us close enough? Daniel nodded. Hold on. He pushed the throttle forward, diving toward the core of the dreadnought. Enemy. Defenses fired wildly, trying to stop them. One blast hit their shield. Another cracked the glass. But Daniel didn't stop. With a final burst of speed, he slammed the fighter into the core. Explosions erupted. The entire dreadnought shuddered. Then, light. A wave of energy swept outward, tearing through the ship. The dreadnought began to break apart. Inside the command center on Earth, alarms stopped. Silence. Then, Sir, the dreadnought is destroyed. Cheers broke out across the room. People hugged, some cried. Earth was safe. For now. Back in space, Daniel's fighter floated in the wreckage. Maya? He asked. She groaned. Still here, he exhaled. Good. Alex's voice came over comms. You two did it, you saved us. Daniel looked at Maya. She was bruised, tired, but smiling. Yeah, he said. We did. Back on the Zalari homeworld, the council met once more. Varel floated silently as the others argued. The humans have proven themselves, one said. We must reconsider our position, another added. Varel finally spoke. They are no longer children, playing in the dark. They are warriors, thinkers, builders. There was silence. Then, a new era has begun. Across human space, word of the victory spread, colonies celebrated, pilots trained harder, scientists pushed further. Humanity had survived. More than that, they had earned respect and fear. In the weeks that followed, peace talks began, not because the Zalari wanted to end the war out of kindness, but because they now understood something important. Humans were not going away. They were here to stay. Back on New Haven, Daniel walked through the rebuilt colony. Fires were gone. Ashes had been cleaned up. Life returned slowly. Alex joined him near the edge of the dome. "You staying?" he asked. Daniel shrugged. "Maybe. For now." Alex smiled. "Good." They looked up at the stars together. Far away, ships flew in formation. Some carried soldiers, others carried scientists. A few carried diplomats. The future was uncertain, but for the first time humanity was shaping it. Inside her lab, Maya powered up a new prototype engine. This one wasn't for war, it was for exploration. She tapped a message into her console. "To all human colonies, the age of discovery begins now." And far across the stars, the galaxy watched, no longer ignoring humanity, no longer underestimating them, because the universe had made a mistake. They had ignored humanity until the war began, and now humanity was awake and they were just getting started.